In a world of international diplomacy, where every gesture carries weight and every word is measured, sometimes the most profound connections happen in the most unexpected moments. When protocol meets spontaneity, when East meets West, and when a simple invitation to drive a car becomes a bridge between two vastly different cultures, history has a way of surprising everyone involved. This is the story of how a British prince's impulsive offer of a car ride to the most powerful man in China created ripples that would reshape diplomatic relationships, challenge ancient protocols, and prove that sometimes the smallest gestures can move mountains. It's a tale of courage, cultural exchange, and the power of human connection that transcends borders, traditions, and the carefully scripted world of international relations. What started as a routine state visit would become anything but routine, setting in motion events that would test the boundaries of diplomacy, friendship, and the delicate balance between tradition and progress in the modern world. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine grounds of Windsor Castle as Prince William adjusted his formal military dress uniform one final time. Today was different from the countless diplomatic events he had attended throughout his life. Today, President Xi Jinping of the People's Republic of China would arrive for what many considered the most significant state visit in decades. The weight of expectation hung heavy in the crisp autumn air. William's private secretary, James Harrison, approached with the final briefing notes clutched in his weathered hands. "Your Royal Highness, the Chinese delegation will arrive at precisely 1100 hours. The president will be accompanied by his wife, Peng Liyuan, and a delegation of 47 officials, including the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the ambassador to the United Kingdom." The prince nodded, his mind already racing through the carefully choreographed schedule that lay ahead. Protocol demanded perfection in every detail, from the positioning of flags to the exact timing of handshakes. Yet something deep within William yearned for authenticity in these increasingly formal encounters. He had grown weary of the scripted nature of diplomatic meetings, where genuine human connection seemed to be sacrificed on the altar of proper procedure. "The motorcade route has been secured," Harrison continued, consulting his notes. "The Metropolitan Police have cordoned off the area, and our security teams have conducted 3 separate sweeps of the grounds. The Chinese security detail arrived yesterday and has been coordinating with our protection officers since dawn." Through the tall windows of the green drawing room, William could see the final preparations taking place. Staff members in crisp uniforms were making last-minute adjustments to the red carpet that stretched across the courtyard. The household cavalry had taken their positions, their horses standing motionless like bronze statues in the morning light. Everything was exactly as it should be, precisely as protocol demanded. But William's attention was drawn to something else entirely. Parked discreetly near the castle's east wing sat his personal Aston Martin DB11, its midnight blue paint gleaming in the sunlight. The car had been his pride and joy since acquiring it the previous year, a small indulgence that connected him to the thrill of driving and the freedom it represented. In a life governed by duty and protocol, the Aston Martin was his escape, his reminder of the simple pleasures that existed beyond the confines of royal responsibility. The sound of helicopter rotors in the distance signaled the approach of the Chinese delegation. William took a deep breath, feeling the familiar mixture of anticipation and responsibility that accompanied such momentous occasions. This visit represented more than diplomatic courtesy. It was an opportunity to strengthen the relationship between two nations whose histories, cultures, and values had often seemed worlds apart. "Sir, if I may," Harrison said, his voice carrying a note of caution, "the Chinese delegation has expressed particular interest in British automotive heritage. They've specifically mentioned their admiration for Aston Martin and its connection to British craftsmanship and innovation." William's eyes lit up with interest. "Really? That's fascinating. I wouldn't have expected automotive interest to be part of the diplomatic agenda." "Indeed, sir. President Xi has been known to appreciate fine engineering, and the Chinese market has become increasingly important for luxury British brands. The economic implications of this visit extend far beyond traditional diplomatic matters. The helicopters grew louder, and through the window, William could see the Royal Flight aircraft approaching the helicopter landing area that had been established on the castle grounds. The Chinese flag flew proudly alongside the Union Jack from the castle's towers, a visual reminder of the importance of this moment in international relations. As the aircraft touched down, William observed the precision with which the Chinese security team immediately took their positions. Men in dark suits emerged first, their eyes constantly scanning the surroundings with professional intensity. The choreography of high-level security was the same regardless of nationality, a universal language of protection and protocol that transcended cultural boundaries. President Xi emerged from the aircraft with the dignity and bearing befitting the leader of the world's most populous nation. He was taller than William had expected, with an air of quiet authority that commanded immediate respect. Beside him, Peng Liyuan moved with the grace of someone accustomed to the international stage, her elegant dress a perfect complement to the formality of the occasion. The formal greetings began immediately. William stepped forward to meet the Chinese leader, extending his hand in the traditional Western gesture of welcome, while also offering a respectful bow that acknowledged Chinese cultural customs. The moment their hands met, cameras clicked furiously, capturing what would undoubtedly become an iconic image of East-West diplomacy. President Xi, welcome to Windsor Castle, William said in carefully practiced Mandarin, the words feeling slightly foreign on his tongue despite weeks of preparation with language tutors. We are honored by your presence here today. A smile crossed the Chinese leader's face, genuine surprise evident in his expression. Your Royal Highness, your Mandarin is quite impressive. This is indeed a great honor for us as well. Windsor Castle is legendary throughout China as a symbol of British heritage and tradition. The formal procession into the castle began, with a household cavalry providing a magnificent escort. The sound of hoofbeats on ancient cobblestones created a rhythmic backdrop to the historic moment unfolding. William found himself walking beside President Xi, their conversation flowing more naturally than he had anticipated despite the language barrier and cultural differences. Your journey from Beijing was comfortable, I trust? William inquired as they made their way through the castle's grand corridors, past portraits of monarchs who had witnessed centuries of British history. Very much so, thank you, President Xi replied. Though I must admit, the view from above as we approached Windsor was quite spectacular. The English countryside is remarkably beautiful, especially during autumn. They passed through the state apartments, where priceless artifacts and paintings told the story of Britain's long and complex history. William noticed how President Xi's eyes lingered on particular pieces, his expression revealing a deep appreciation for artistry and craftsmanship that transcended cultural boundaries. The tour continued through the castle's most prestigious rooms, each space carefully chosen to showcase British heritage while respecting the significance of the visit. In the Waterloo Chamber, surrounded by portraits of the leaders who had defeated Napoleon, the weight of history seemed particularly palpable. Here, past and present converged in a way that reminded both men of their roles as stewards of their nation's legacies. The preservation of historical artifacts is clearly a priority here, President Xi observed, pausing before a magnificent painting. In China, we face similar challenges in maintaining our cultural heritage while embracing modernization. It's a delicate balance, William agreed. We're fortunate to have dedicated conservators who ensure these treasures remain intact for future generations. I imagine China faces even greater challenges given the scale and diversity of your cultural heritage. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of other members of the Chinese delegation, including several ministers and the Chinese ambassador to Britain. Formal introductions were made, and William found himself impressed by the professionalism and warmth of the entire group. Despite the obvious cultural differences, there was an underlying sense of mutual respect that boded well for the meetings ahead. As they moved toward the state dining room for the welcome luncheon, William caught sight of his Aston Martin through one of the windows. The car seemed almost out of place among the ancient stones and formal gardens of Windsor, a modern intrusion into a world steeped in tradition. Yet something about its presence sparked an idea in the back of his mind. The though he couldn't quite articulate what it was. The luncheon itself was a masterpiece of diplomatic cuisine, featuring dishes that honored both British and Chinese culinary traditions. William found himself seated across from President Xi, their conversation ranging from topics as diverse as environmental conservation, technological innovation, and the challenges of leadership in the modern world. Your generation of leaders faces unique challenges, President Xi remarked over the main course. The speed of change in technology, economics, and global communication requires adaptability while maintaining respect for tradition. Absolutely, William replied. I often think about how my grandmother, the Queen, has navigated decades of change while preserving the essential character of the monarchy. It's a lesson in balancing innovation with continuity. The Chinese leader nodded thoughtfully. In China, we speak of building bridges between our ancient civilization and our modern aspirations. Sometimes the most important bridges are the ones we build between people, not just between nations. As the luncheon concluded and the formal afternoon program prepared to begin, William felt a growing sense of connection with his distinguished guest. Despite the vast differences in their backgrounds, responsibilities, and cultures, there was something fundamentally human about their interaction that transcended diplomatic protocol. The afternoon schedule called for a tour of the castle's automotive collection, a relatively recent addition to Windsor's attractions that showcased the evolution of royal transportation over the decades. It was here that William's earlier idea began to take more concrete shape, though he wasn't yet sure if he had the courage to act on it. As they walked toward the collection, President Xi's genuine interest in the vehicles became immediately apparent. He examined each car with the attention of someone who truly appreciated mechanical engineering and design innovation. When they reached the section featuring modern British automotive achievements, his eyes lingered longest on the examples of Aston Martin craftsmanship. The attention to detail is extraordinary, President Xi observed, running his hand along the sleek lines of a classic DB5. The marriage of performance and elegance represents the best of British engineering tradition. William watched the Chinese leader's appreciation with growing interest. This was clearly more than polite diplomatic attention. President Xi possessed genuine knowledge and passion for automotive excellence. It was in that moment that William's earlier idea crystallized into something approaching a plan, though he knew it would require careful consideration of protocol and potential consequences. The tour continued with discussions of British automotive heritage, the importance of craftsmanship in modern manufacturing, and the growing relationship between British luxury brands and Chinese consumers. Throughout these conversations, William found himself increasingly impressed by President Xi's depth of knowledge and genuine curiosity about British culture and innovation. As the afternoon progressed and the formal schedule moved toward its conclusion, William's thoughts kept returning to his Aston Martin parked outside. What had started as a fleeting idea was becoming something more substantial, though he knew that acting on it would require both courage and careful timing. The late afternoon sun cast golden light across Windsor's carefully manicured gardens as the formal tour concluded. President Xi and his delegation had exceeded every expectation, displaying genuine warmth and intellectual curiosity that had transformed what could have been a stilted diplomatic exercise into something approaching real cultural exchange. Yet William couldn't shake the feeling that an opportunity was slipping away, that beneath all the protocol and ceremony lay the potential for something more meaningful. James Harrison approached with the evening's schedule, his expression bearing the slightly weary look of someone who had orchestrated countless such events. Your Royal Highness, we have approximately 30 minutes before the delegation departs for their hotel. The formal farewell ceremony is scheduled for 4:30, followed by the motorcade departure at 5 o'clock precisely. William nodded, but his attention was divided. Through the window, he could see President Xi standing with his wife and several delegation members in the castle's courtyard, their conversation animated and clearly enjoying the relaxed atmosphere that had developed throughout the day. The Chinese leader's earlier comments about building bridges between people rather than just nations echoed in William's mind. James, William said suddenly, surprising himself with the decision that was forming. What would be the protocol implications if I were to extend an informal invitation to President Xi? Something beyond the scheduled program. Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly, his diplomatic training immediately calculating potential complications. That would depend entirely on the nature of the invitation, sir. Any deviation from the agreed schedule would need to be coordinated with both security teams and would require approval from the Chinese delegation's protocol officers. I understand the complications, William replied, his gaze drifting once again to the Aston Martin. But sometimes the most meaningful diplomatic gestures happen outside the formal framework, don't they? Through the courtyard windows, William watched as President Xi paused beside a fountain, pointing out architectural details to his wife. The Chinese leader's genuine appreciation for British heritage had been evident throughout the day, but it was his comments about automotive craftsmanship that had particularly resonated. Here was a man who clearly understood and valued excellence in engineering and design. The prince made his decision with the kind of swift determination that had characterized many of the most significant moments in his life. James, I'd like you to discreetly approach the Chinese protocol team. Inquire whether President Xi might be interested in a brief, informal demonstration of British automotive heritage before his departure. Harrison's expression betrayed his concern. Sir, any unscheduled activity would require extensive security clearance. The logistics alone. I'm not suggesting we abandon all precautions, William interrupted gently. But surely there's room for a small gesture of hospitality that goes beyond the official program. Something that acknowledges President Xi's genuine interest in British engineering. The private secretary consulted his ever-present clipboard, clearly running through mental calculations of security requirements, diplomatic protocols, and potential complications. If you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, sir, it would be highly irregular. The insurance implications alone would require immediate consultation with Palace legal counsel. William smiled, recognizing the familiar tension between spontaneity and protocol that had defined much of his adult life. James, some of the most successful diplomatic initiatives in history have been highly irregular. Remember when my father decided to invite world leaders to his organic farm? The protocol officers nearly had heart attacks, but it created more genuine diplomatic progress than a dozen formal summits. Before Harrison could respond, William was already moving toward the courtyard, his decision crystallizing into action. He approached the Chinese delegation with the confident stride of someone who had made peace with the potential consequences of his actions. President Xi, William called out as he drew near, switching smoothly into Mandarin. I hope you found today's visit informative and enjoyable. The Chinese leader turned with a warm smile, clearly pleased by the prince's continued efforts with his language. More than informative, Your Royal Highness. Today has been truly enlightening. Your knowledge of Chinese culture and your obvious respect for our traditions has been most impressive. The pleasure has been entirely mutual, William replied. Your insights into British heritage and craftsmanship have given me new perspectives on our own traditions. Speaking of which, I wondered if you might be interested in a brief demonstration of contemporary British automotive engineering before your departure. President Xi's eyes lit up with genuine interest, though his diplomatic training clearly kicked in as he considered the implications. That's a most gracious offer, though I wouldn't want to impose on your schedule or create complications for your security arrangements. William had anticipated this response and was prepared. Not at all. I was thinking of something quite simple, actually. Perhaps you'd like to experience firsthand the engineering excellence we were discussing earlier. I have a rather fine example of modern Aston Martin craftsmanship just nearby. The invitation hung in the air between them, and William could almost see the mental calculations taking place in President Xi's mind. This was clearly beyond the scope of normal diplomatic protocol, yet it represented exactly the kind of personal gesture that could transform a routine state visit into something memorable. Hung Liyuan, who had been listening to the exchange with growing amusement, leaned toward her husband and whispered something in rapid Chinese that William couldn't quite catch. Whatever she said brought a broader smile to President Xi's face. My wife reminds me that we are guests in your country and that refusing such hospitality might be considered impolite, President Xi said with a chuckle. Besides, I must admit that your invitation appeals to what she calls my weakness for fine automobiles. Behind them, William could see Harrison frantically gesturing to security personnel, clearly trying to establish whether such an impromptu activity could be safely arranged. The Chinese security detail was similarly engaged in rapid consultation, their professional demeanor masking what was undoubtedly significant concern about departing from the carefully planned schedule. "Excellent," William said, choosing to interpret President Xi's response as acceptance. "The car is just over here. I think you'll find it represents the very best of contemporary British engineering and design philosophy." As they walked toward the Aston Martin, word of the impromptu demonstration spread quickly among both the British and Chinese staff. William could sense the barely controlled tension of security personnel who were suddenly required to assess and secure an entirely new situation with minimal preparation time. The midnight blue DB-11 gleamed in the late afternoon sunlight, its elegant lines seeming to embody everything that William had been trying to convey about British craftsmanship and attention to detail. President Xi approached the vehicle with the reverence of someone who truly appreciated automotive artistry. "The design philosophy is remarkable," President Xi observed, slowly walking around the car. "There's something uniquely British about the way form and function are integrated so seamlessly." William felt a surge of pride, not just in the car, but in what it represented about his country's commitment to excellence. Aston Martin has been perfecting this balance for over a century. This particular model combines a twin-turbocharged V8 engine with advanced aerodynamics and luxury appointments that make it equally suitable for daily driving or high-performance applications. President Xi's appreciation was clearly genuine as he examined details of the car's construction and design. His questions demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of automotive engineering that went far beyond polite diplomatic interest. "The attention to detail in the interior craftsmanship is extraordinary," President Xi commented, peering through the driver's side window. "The leatherwork and instrument layout suggest the same kind of artisanal tradition that we observe in the castle's historical artifacts." It was in that moment that William made his second crucial decision of the afternoon. Looking at President Xi's obvious fascination with the vehicle, listening to his knowledgeable comments about automotive engineering, and remembering their earlier conversation about building bridges between people, the prince took a deep breath. "President Xi," William said, his voice carrying a note of determination that surprised even him, "would you be interested in experiencing this engineering excellence firsthand? Perhaps you'd like to get behind the wheel yourself." The silence that followed this invitation was profound. William could practically hear the collective intake of breath from security personnel, protocol officers, and diplomatic staff within earshot. This was so far beyond normal procedure that there probably wasn't even existing protocol to cover such a situation. President Xi's expression cycled through surprise, consideration, and what might have been delight. "Your Royal Highness, that is an extraordinarily generous offer. However, I must consider the practical implications." "Of course," William replied quickly. "I wouldn't suggest anything that might compromise your security or create diplomatic complications. But the castle grounds offer a secure environment, and I think both our security teams are capable of managing a brief demonstration drive." The Chinese leader looked around the courtyard, taking in the secure environment, the professional demeanor of the security personnel, and the genuine enthusiasm of his host. When his eyes returned to William, there was something approaching mischief in his expression. "My wife often tells me that I'm too cautious, too bound by protocol and procedure," President Xi said with a smile. "Perhaps this is an opportunity to prove her wrong." William grinned, recognizing a kindred spirit in someone who occasionally chafed against the constraints of official duty. "Excellent. Let me just coordinate with our respective security teams to ensure everything can be arranged safely." The next few minutes were a masterclass in rapid diplomatic and security coordination. Harrison appeared at William's side with remarkable speed, flanked by the head of royal protection and a Chinese security official whose title William didn't know, but whose authority was unmistakable. "Sir," Harrison said quietly, "this is highly irregular, but if you're determined to proceed, we can establish a secure perimeter within the castle grounds. The Chinese security team has indicated they can authorize a brief demonstration provided certain conditions are met. What conditions? William asked, though he was prepared to agree to almost anything to make this moment happen. The Chinese security chief, speaking through an interpreter, outlined the requirements: a predetermined route within the castle grounds, radio communication maintained at all times, security vehicles positioned at strategic points, and a maximum speed that was probably less than most people drove in city traffic. Perfectly reasonable, William agreed. Shall we make this happen? As arrangements were finalized with remarkable efficiency, William found himself thinking about the potential significance of what was about to occur. This wasn't just about a car ride. It was about trust, spontaneity, and the kind of personal connection that could transform diplomatic relationships. President Xi stood beside the Aston Martin, his expression revealing the same kind of anticipation that William often felt before driving. Here was the leader of the world's most populous nation, about to experience a quintessentially British automotive experience in the grounds of one of Britain's most historic castles. This should be interesting, President Xi said with understated humor as security personnel completed their final preparations around them. The transformation of Windsor Castle's normally serene grounds into a secure automotive demonstration area happened with the kind of precision that only comes from years of high-level security training. Within minutes, personnel had established a carefully planned route that would allow President Xi to experience the Aston Martin while maintaining the safety protocols demanded by both nations' protection services. William watched with fascination as Chinese and British security teams worked together with remarkable coordination, their professional efficiency transcending any language barriers. Radio checks were conducted, sight lines were established, and emergency procedures were quietly reviewed. The level of preparation required for what was essentially a short drive around a courtyard would have been amusing under different circumstances. President Xi observed these preparations with the patient demeanor of someone accustomed to the elaborate security arrangements that governed his daily life. Yet William detected an underlying excitement in the Chinese leader's expression, the same anticipation that any automotive enthusiast would feel when presented with an exceptional driving opportunity. Your security teams are remarkably professional, President Xi commented as they watched the final preparations. The coordination between our respective services has been seamless. They're the best in the world at what they do, William replied with genuine pride. Though I suspect this isn't exactly the kind of scenario they trained for in their security courses. Peng Liyuan approached them with an expression of amused tolerance that William recognized from his own wife's face when he became particularly enthusiastic about cars or motorcycles. My husband has always had what he calls an appreciation for fine machinery, she said in careful English. Though I suspect his appreciation might be tested when he's actually responsible for operating such an expensive piece of fine machinery. President Xi laughed, the sound carrying a note of nervous anticipation. My wife has little confidence in my practical mechanical skills. She prefers that I limit my automotive enthusiasm to theoretical appreciation. I have complete faith in your abilities, William assured him. Besides, modern Aston Martins are designed to be both high-performance and user-friendly. The engineering team has done remarkable work in making advanced automotive technology accessible. Harrison appeared beside William with a tablet containing what appeared to be hastily drafted documentation. Sir, we've prepared a brief technical overview of the vehicle's systems and safety features. The Chinese security team has requested confirmation of all operational parameters. William glanced at the screen, noting the typical bureaucratic thoroughness that characterized any official activity involving heads of state. Every conceivable detail had been documented, from tire pressures to emergency shut-off procedures. Yet beneath all the official preparation, he sensed that everyone involved understood they were participating in something genuinely unprecedented. The head of the Chinese security detail approached President Xi with similar documentation, engaging in a rapid conversation in Mandarin that William could only partially follow. From the gestures and tone, it was clearly a final review of safety protocols and emergency procedures. Everything appears to be in order, President Xi announced after completing his consultation. Though I must admit, this represents a rather unique addition to the diplomatic program. William moved to the driver's side of the Aston Martin and opened the door, gesturing for President Xi to examine the interior. The layout is quite intuitive, actually. Aston Martin's design philosophy emphasizes driver engagement while maintaining sophisticated comfort features. President Xi approached the car with the careful attention of someone who genuinely appreciated automotive craftsmanship. He examined the hand-stitched leather seats, the precisely positioned instruments, and the elegant integration of modern technology with traditional luxury elements. The build quality is extraordinary, President Xi observed, settling into the driver's seat with obvious appreciation. There's something about British luxury goods that manages to combine innovation with a respect for traditional craftsmanship. William walked around to the passenger side, noting how the car seemed to suit President Xi despite the obvious cultural and contextual differences between the Chinese leader and the typical Aston Martin customer. Quality and excellence, it seemed, transcended national boundaries. The engine management system is quite sophisticated, William explained as he settled into the passenger seat. But the interface remains intuitive. The goal was to provide maximum performance capability while ensuring that the driving experience remains accessible and enjoyable. As president, Xi familiarized himself with the controls. William found himself thinking about the broader implications of this moment. Here they were, two leaders from vastly different cultures and political systems, sharing an appreciation for engineering excellence and the simple pleasure of automotive performance. It was exactly the kind of human connection that formal diplomatic protocols often struggle to facilitate. The ergonomics are quite impressive, President Xi commented, adjusting the seat and mirrors with the methodical precision of an experienced driver. Everything falls naturally to hand, which suggests considerable attention to user experience during the design process. Aston Martin employs some of the world's most talented ergonomic specialists, William replied. The goal is to create an environment where the driver feels completely connected to the vehicle, where the technology enhances rather than interferes with the driving experience. Around them, security personnel had taken their predetermined positions, creating an invisible but comprehensive protective perimeter. Radio communications crackled quietly as final preparations were completed and route clearances were confirmed. Yet despite all the official activity, William was struck by the essentially intimate nature of what they were about to do. President Xi completed his pre-drive familiarization and looked toward William with an expression that mixed anticipation with just a hint of apprehension. I must confess, it has been some time since I've driven anything more performance-oriented than an official sedan. I hope your confidence in my abilities isn't misplaced. I have complete faith, William assured him. Besides, the castle grounds provide an ideal environment for a relaxed demonstration. No traffic, no pressure, just the opportunity to experience what British automotive engineering can achieve. The Chinese leader nodded and pressed the engine start button. The Aston Martin's V8 engine came to life with a deep, refined rumble that seemed to embody everything William loved about performance automobiles. The sound was powerful yet sophisticated, aggressive yet controlled. It was, he reflected, rather like diplomacy at its best. President Xi's face lit up with obvious pleasure at the engine's note. That's quite something, he said, unconsciously revving the engine slightly to appreciate the full range of its acoustic character. There's something uniquely satisfying about a properly tuned V8 engine. The exhaust system was specifically designed to provide optimal performance while maintaining what Aston Martin calls acoustic refinement, William explained. It's meant to be thrilling without being antisocial. They began moving slowly through the designated route, President Xi handling the powerful car with the cautious respect it deserved while gradually becoming more comfortable with its capabilities. William watched his passengers' growing confidence with satisfaction, recognizing the universal appeal of well-engineered automotive excellence. The steering response is remarkable, President Xi observed as they navigated a gentle curve past the castle's medieval walls. There's immediate feedback from the road surface, yet the car feels completely stable and predictable. Modern Aston Martins represent over a century of evolution in automotive dynamics, William replied. The engineering team has achieved what they call the perfect balance between performance and refinement. As they continued their circuit of the castle grounds, William noticed that President Xi was gradually increasing their pace, his initial caution giving way to growing appreciation for the car's capabilities. The Chinese leader's driving style was smooth and measured, demonstrating the kind of mechanical sympathy that comes from genuine automotive knowledge. In China, we have great respect for British engineering traditions, President Xi said as they passed the castle's rose garden. But experiencing this level of craftsmanship firsthand provides a completely different appreciation for what your automotive industry has achieved. It's gratifying to hear that, William replied. Aston Martin and other British manufacturers have worked hard to maintain their reputation for excellence while adapting to modern performance and environmental standards. They approached a slightly more open section of the route, and William sensed President Xi's growing desire to explore more of the car's performance envelope. Feel free to experience a bit more of what the car can do, William encouraged. The security teams have cleared this entire section, and the Aston Martin is designed to be enjoyed. President Xi needed no further encouragement. He gradually increased their speed, and William felt the familiar thrill of acceleration as the powerful engine responded to increased throttle input. The car's sophisticated suspension system absorbed the minor irregularities of the castle's historic cobblestones while maintaining perfect composure. "This is quite extraordinary," President Xi said, his voice carrying the enthusiasm of someone discovering an unexpected pleasure. "The power delivery is so smooth, so progressive. There's none of the harshness one might expect from such performance capability." William smiled, recognizing the conversion of another automotive enthusiast. That's exactly what Aston Martin's engineers strive for, the ability to provide supercar performance with luxury car refinement. As they completed their circuit and began to slow down, William could see the genuine reluctance in President Xi's expression. This had clearly been more than just a diplomatic gesture. It had been a genuinely enjoyable experience that had exceeded expectations. "That was remarkable," President Xi said as they came to a gentle stop near their starting point. "Your invitation has provided insights into British automotive excellence that no amount of technical documentation could convey." Around them, security personnel began to relax slightly as the impromptu driving demonstration concluded without incident. William could see relief mixed with satisfaction in the faces of both British and Chinese officials who had made this unprecedented moment possible. "The pleasure was entirely mutual," William replied. "It's been fascinating to share this experience with someone who clearly appreciates both the technical achievement and the craftsmanship involved." As they prepared to exit the vehicle, William realized that something significant had occurred beyond the simple act of sharing a car ride. They had created a moment of genuine human connection that transcended the formal boundaries of diplomatic protocol. It was exactly the kind of bridge building that President Xi had spoken about earlier in the day. As President Xi reluctantly switched off the Aston Martin's engine, the refined rumble fading into the ambient sounds of Windsor Castle's grounds, William could see the genuine satisfaction in the Chinese leader's expression. This had been far more than a diplomatic courtesy. It had been an authentic moment of shared appreciation that seemed to have surprised everyone involved, including the participants themselves. "That was truly exceptional," President Xi said as he carefully exited the driver's seat, his movements deliberate and respectful of the precision machinery he had just experienced. "Your generosity in sharing this has provided insights that I will remember long after the formal aspects of this visit have faded." William felt a surge of satisfaction that went beyond mere diplomatic success. They had accomplished something that formal protocols rarely achieved, a genuine moment of human connection based on shared interests rather than official necessity. "The pleasure was entirely mine," William replied. "It's rare to find someone who truly appreciates both the technical achievement and the artistry involved in automotive excellence." Peng Liyuan approached them with an expression of amused tolerance, mixed with genuine curiosity. "From your expressions, I can see that this experience exceeded expectations," she observed. "Though I suspect my husband will now spend considerable time researching British automotive engineering." "Your wife knows you well," William said with a laugh. Automotive enthusiasm tends to be contagious, especially when it involves machinery of this caliber. President Xi nodded with mock resignation. She's quite correct. I fear I may become insufferably knowledgeable about Aston Martin specifications and British automotive history. My staff will have to endure detailed discussions of engine management systems and suspension geometry. As the security teams began their post-activity protocols, Harrison approached with the carefully controlled expression of someone who had just witnessed something unprecedented in his extensive diplomatic experience. Your Royal Highness, I trust the demonstration proceeded satisfactorily? Better than satisfactorily, William replied. I think we've successfully demonstrated that British automotive engineering can impress even the most discerning international observers. Around them, both British and Chinese officials were engaging in the kind of rapid consultation that typically followed any deviation from established protocol. Yet William sensed that the prevailing mood was one of satisfaction rather than concern. They had managed to accomplish something genuinely positive without compromising security or diplomatic propriety. President Xi turned to examine the Aston Martin one final time, his appreciation clearly undiminished by the conclusion of the driving experience. The integration of performance and luxury is remarkable, he observed. This represents exactly the kind of excellence that has made British engineering legendary throughout the world. It's gratifying to know that reputation remains intact, William replied. British manufacturers have worked hard to maintain their standards while adapting to modern requirements and expectations. The Chinese leader's attention was drawn to details of the car's construction that he hadn't noticed during the driving experience. He examined the precision of the panel gaps, the quality of the paint finish, and the elegant integration of functional elements like the exhaust system and aerodynamic features. The attention to detail is extraordinary, President Xi commented. Every element appears to have been considered not just for its functional contribution, but for its aesthetic impact as well. That's exactly the philosophy that distinguishes British luxury manufacturers, William explained. The goal is to create products that satisfy both rational and emotional criteria that appeal to both the mind and the heart. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of several members of the Chinese delegation who had been observing the automotive demonstration from a respectful distance. Their expressions revealed a mixture of curiosity, amusement, and what appeared to be genuine appreciation for the impromptu addition to the day's program. Minister Chun Wei, who served as President Xi's senior economic advisor, approached with the kind of smile that suggested professional interest beyond mere diplomatic politeness. Your Royal Highness, this has been a most enlightening demonstration. The reputation of British automotive excellence is clearly well-deserved. William recognized an opportunity to discuss broader economic relationships that extended beyond the immediate appeal of luxury automobiles. British manufacturers have benefited enormously from China's growing appreciation for premium automotive products. The relationship has been mutually beneficial. Indeed, Minister Chen replied, Chinese consumers have developed increasingly sophisticated tastes in luxury goods, and British brands have responded with products that meet our highest expectations for quality and innovation. President Xi joined their conversation with obvious interest in the economic implications of their automotive discussion. The automotive sector represents much more than luxury consumption, he observed. It demonstrates the kind of innovation and manufacturing excellence that drives broader economic relationships between our nations. William nodded, recognizing the opportunity to connect their shared automotive experience to larger diplomatic and economic objectives. British automotive technology has benefited significantly from Chinese investment and collaboration. It's exactly the kind of partnership that strengthens both economies. The conversation that followed was unlike any diplomatic discussion William had previously experienced. Instead of the carefully scripted exchanges that characterized most formal meetings, they found themselves engaged in a spontaneous and genuine exploration of shared interests and common ground. The engineering challenges involved in modern automotive development require international collaboration, President Xi noted. No single nation possesses all the expertise and resources necessary for optimal innovation. Absolutely, William agreed. British automotive excellence has always depended on our ability to collaborate with the best minds and most advanced technologies available anywhere in the world. Minister Chun contributed insights into Chinese automotive development strategies and the growing importance of British expertise in luxury vehicle engineering. The discussion naturally evolved to encompass broader topics of technological collaboration, educational exchange, and the importance of maintaining open dialogue between nations with different political and economic systems. Today's experience illustrates exactly the kind of understanding that formal diplomatic protocols sometimes struggle to achieve, President Xi observed. Shared appreciation for excellence creates common ground that transcends cultural and political differences. William found himself increasingly impressed by the depth and sophistication of President Xi's thinking about international relationships. This was clearly someone who understood that genuine diplomacy required personal connection and mutual respect, not just formal agreement on policy positions. As their impromptu discussion continued, William became aware that something significant was happening beyond the immediate pleasure of automotive appreciation. They were establishing the kind of personal rapport that could have lasting implications for British-Chinese relations, the kind of understanding that might prove valuable when future challenges required creative diplomatic solutions. Your invitation today has provided insights that extend far beyond automotive engineering, President Xi said. It demonstrates a generosity of spirit and openness to genuine cultural exchange that is unfortunately rare in international relations. The opportunity to share something I'm passionate about with someone who clearly appreciates excellence has been equally valuable for me, William replied. These kinds of authentic exchanges remind us why diplomacy matters and what it can accomplish when conducted with mutual respect. Peng Liyuan, who had been observing their extended conversation with obvious satisfaction, approached with a gentle reminder about their schedule. I'm reluctant to interrupt such an engaging discussion, but I believe our departure time approaches. President Xi checked his watch with apparent reluctance. Indeed, responsibility calls. Though I must say, this afternoon has provided the most genuinely enlightening aspect of our entire visit. William felt a similar reluctance to see the experience conclude. Perhaps when your schedule permits, you might consider visiting some of Britain's automotive manufacturing facilities. I think you'd find the engineering processes as impressive as the finished products. That's a most intriguing possibility, President Xi replied with obvious interest. I would welcome the opportunity to observe British manufacturing excellence firsthand. As they began walking back toward the castle's main entrance where the departure ceremonies would take place, William reflected on what they had accomplished. A simple gesture of hospitality had evolved into something approaching genuine friendship, demonstrating the power of shared interests to bridge even the most substantial cultural and political differences. Today has reminded me why cultural exchange matters, President Xi said as they approached the formal farewell area. It's only through authentic human connection that we can build the understanding necessary for productive international cooperation. I couldn't agree more, William replied. Perhaps this experience will serve as a model for future diplomatic engagements, showing that the most meaningful dialogue often happens outside the formal conference rooms. The final preparations for departure were now clearly visible as staff members took their positions for the ceremonial farewell. Yet, both men seemed reluctant to transition back to the formal protocols that would mark the conclusion of President Xi's state visit. The formal farewell ceremony that concluded President Xi's state visit bore all the traditional hallmarks of diplomatic protocol. Yet everyone present seemed aware that something unprecedented had occurred earlier that afternoon. As the Chinese delegation prepared for departure, there was an unmistakable warmth in the interactions that suggested genuine connections had been forged beyond the usual diplomatic courtesies. William stood beside President Xi as they reviewed the ceremonial guard one final time, both men clearly reluctant to see their unexpected friendship reduced to formal handshakes and official communiques. The Aston Martin experience had created a bond that transcended the carefully scripted nature of state visits, providing authentic common ground that neither had anticipated when the day began. Your hospitality today has exceeded every expectation, President Xi said as they completed the ceremonial inspection. The automotive demonstration will remain a highlight not just of this visit, but of my entire experience with British culture and innovation. William felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond diplomatic success. The pleasure was entirely mutual, he replied. It's rare to encounter someone who combines such obvious automotive knowledge with genuine appreciation for engineering artistry. As they walked toward the waiting motorcade, Harrison approached with a folder containing the traditional exchange of gifts that marked the conclusion of state visits. William accepted the documents while mentally noting that the most meaningful gift exchange had already occurred earlier that afternoon when he had shared his passion for automotive excellence with someone who could truly appreciate it. "Your Royal Highness, President," she said, accepting a commemorative gift from the British government. "I hope this afternoon's experience might serve as a foundation for continued cultural and technological exchange between our nations." "I would welcome such opportunities," William replied. "Perhaps future visits might include more extensive exploration of British automotive heritage and manufacturing capabilities." The Chinese leader's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "That possibility is most appealing. I believe there is much that China could learn from British approaches to luxury manufacturing and engineering innovation." Minister Chen Wei, who had been coordinating final departure logistics, approached with obvious satisfaction about the day's unexpected developments. "Your Royal Highness, President, she has asked me to express his particular appreciation for the automotive demonstration. It has provided insights that will definitely influence our future economic and technological cooperation discussions." William recognized the significance of this statement. What had begun as a spontaneous gesture of hospitality was apparently evolving into something with potential implications for broader British-Chinese relations. "I'm delighted to know that our shared appreciation for automotive excellence might contribute to stronger economic ties between our nations." The motorcade departure was scheduled for precisely 5:30. Yet as the appointed time approached, both leaders seemed reluctant to conclude their impromptu friendship. "President," she paused beside his official vehicle, clearly wanting to extend their conversation despite the demands of protocol and scheduling. "Your invitation today demonstrated something important about British character, President," she observed. "The willingness to share something personally meaningful, to trust in spontaneous cultural exchange, reflects the kind of openness that makes productive international relationships possible." William was struck by the depth of President Xi's analysis of their simple car-sharing experience. "I hadn't thought of it in such broad terms, but you're absolutely right. The most meaningful diplomatic progress often happens when people are willing to be authentic with each other." Peng Liyuan approached them with the gentle persistence of someone accustomed to managing her husband's tendency to extend interesting conversations beyond their scheduled conclusions. "I'm reluctant to interrupt, but our evening schedule in London requires timely departure." President Xi nodded with obvious reluctance. "Of course, though I must say, this afternoon's conversation has been more enlightening than most formal diplomatic sessions." As the final farewell handshakes were exchanged, William felt a genuine sense of loss at seeing his unexpected new friend depart. They had accomplished something rare in international relations: the establishment of personal rapport based on shared interests rather than political necessity. "Perhaps, President," she said as he prepared to enter his official vehicle, "future visits might allow for expanded exploration of British automotive heritage. I would welcome the opportunity to visit manufacturing facilities and meet the engineers responsible for such remarkable achievements." "That can definitely be arranged," William assured him. "I think you'd find British automotive engineering facilities as impressive as the finished products." The Chinese motorcade departed Windsor Castle with the same precision that had marked its arrival, yet William sensed that something fundamental had changed during the intervening hours. A routine state visit had evolved into something approaching genuine friendship, demonstrating the power of authentic human connection to transcend cultural and political boundaries. Harrison appeared beside William as the last vehicle in the Chinese delegation disappeared from view. "Well, sir, that was certainly unprecedented. I believe we've just witnessed something unique in the history of diplomatic protocol." William smiled, still processing the afternoon's unexpected developments. Sometimes the most important diplomatic progress happens when we're willing to abandon protocol in favor of authentic human connection. "Indeed, sir." Though I suspect the insurance implications of today's automotive demonstration will generate considerable paperwork for the Palace Legal Department. The administrative aftermath of their impromptu automotive diplomacy would indeed prove extensive. Within hours, requests for detailed reports were arriving from various government departments, insurance companies, and security agencies, all seeking to understand how such an unprecedented deviation from diplomatic protocol had been authorized and executed. Yet William felt no regret about his spontaneous decision to share his Aston Martin with President Xi. The genuine connection they had established seemed far more valuable than any potential administrative complications their actions might generate. Over the following weeks, the impact of that afternoon's automotive demonstration became increasingly apparent. President Xi referenced their shared driving experience in subsequent speeches about British-Chinese technological cooperation. Chinese media coverage of the state visit focused extensively on the prince's gesture of automotive hospitality, presenting it as evidence of British openness to genuine cultural exchange. More significantly, the automotive demonstration appeared to have catalyzed broader discussions about technological collaboration between British and Chinese industries. Within a month, preliminary agreements were being negotiated for Chinese investment in British automotive research and development, with specific emphasis on luxury vehicle engineering and advanced manufacturing techniques. British automotive manufacturers reported increased Chinese interest in their products and technologies, attributing the growth directly to President Xi's public enthusiasm for British engineering excellence. The economic implications of William's spontaneous invitation were proving far more substantial than anyone had anticipated. 6 months later, President Xi made an unprecedented return visit to Britain, specifically requesting tours of Aston Martin's manufacturing facilities and meetings with British automotive engineers. The visit, officially focused on technological and economic cooperation, was widely regarded as confirmation that genuine personal relationships could indeed influence international diplomacy. During that return visit, President Xi presented William with a custom-designed Chinese luxury sedan, equipped with hybrid technology that represented the latest advances in Chinese automotive engineering. The gesture was seen as reciprocal recognition of the friendship that had been established during their Windsor Castle automotive experience. Your willingness to share your passion for automotive excellence opened doors that formal diplomacy had struggled to unlock, President Xi told William during the return visit. Sometimes the most important bridges between nations are built through personal connection and mutual respect. The Aston Martin demonstration at Windsor Castle had become something of a legend within diplomatic circles, cited as an example of how authentic human connection could transform international relations. Protocol officers throughout the British diplomatic service began incorporating discussions of spontaneous cultural exchange opportunities into their training programs. William often reflected on the afternoon that had begun as a simple gesture of hospitality and evolved into something approaching diplomatic history. The experience had reinforced his belief that genuine human connection represented the foundation of productive international relations, and that sometimes the most important diplomatic progress happened when leaders were willing to abandon scripts and protocols in favor of authentic engagement. The midnight blue Aston Martin remained parked at Windsor Castle, but it had acquired a new significance beyond its original role as William's personal automotive indulgence. It had become a symbol of the power of shared appreciation to bridge even the most substantial cultural and political differences, a reminder that diplomacy at its best was ultimately about human connection rather than formal procedure. Years later, historians would mark President Xi's Windsor Castle visit as a turning point in British-Chinese relations, noting that unprecedented levels of technological and economic cooperation had emerged from what appeared to be a simple automotive demonstration. The afternoon when a British prince asked a Chinese president if he wanted to drive an Aston Martin had indeed changed the course of international diplomacy, proving that sometimes the smallest gestures could move the largest mountains.